the Baen Free Radio Hour.
Hello and welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour. This week we bring you part 2 of Toni Weisskopf discussing science and science fiction with our Fall Hard for Science Fiction lineup of authors. Listen in as she talks to Joelle and Andy Presby, Catherine Asaro, Les Johnson, Dan Koboldt, and David Weber about their upcoming books, and later, One Jump Ahead by Mark L. Van Name, part 36.
There's always going to be bald guys, man. That's just the way the
I mean, look, colored man, and they saw it.
No, I'm serious. You know, the gray hair, the glasses. The whole,
all right. So let me I'm going to feel this, then I'm going to toss it over, back to the guy with the arm. The answer is that biology and genetic engineering, in particular, are much, much, much more complicated, and that the kind of quick tweaks that you think you're going to get, you're probably not going to get, at least not in that shorter type window. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think, Dan?
I think it's interesting that you bring that up, and honestly, even though I work in this field, I don't necessarily have that reaction when a character is being described, and I'm like, oh, they would have fixed that by now. I think in part it's because where we are pushing the frontier right now on, like, what I would call gene therapy, not so much genetic engineering, but gene therapy. It's really about correcting genetic problems that right now are medically serious. That's kind of the immediate priority. Genetic disorders, seeing if we can use gene therapy to correct a genetic defect. And that alone is very, very challenging and tough to do. And sometimes a genetic change will arise, and by the time you can identify it and realize it's a problem, the damage has somewhat been done. So there's a lot of these things that happen, like new mutations that occur in a child, are not recognized until they've already caused a health problem during the development of that child, right? And so there are a lot of, where I'm going with this is, there are many ways that nature is going to create problems we can't immediately solve, even if we knew how. And so I'm not saying that, baldness as our laughing example of that fits the mark here, but I think one challenge is that in genetics, one thing we're realizing is everything is much more entwined and complicated than it would be. There's no like, oh, you got the baldness gene, we'll just take that sucker out of there and you're going to have a full head of hair. Right? It's like, even just like your eye color, which is something people think is a very simple genetic thing. There's like 15 different loci throughout the genome that strongly influence eye color now. So it's not as easy to fix all these things as we would like. And I think, getting back to your original point, Les, there's hesitance among scientists to delve into the designer baby area of genetic engineering and gene therapy, which is, well, we're not going to fix a problem per se. We're going to make somebody look better. I think we're all kind of, by unspoken consensus, staying away from that area of pushing the envelope.
So yeah, it's the interconnectedness that we are just on the earliest frontiers of understanding at this point. Things that we thought we knew about DNA, we don't actually know, like the quote unquote junk DNA, right? Mm-hmm. Where we don't know what this does, and this probably doesn't do anything. Well, the answer is we're discovering, I believe, Dan, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is not really true, right? That quote unquote what they described as junk DNA is actually doing stuff we just didn't know what it was doing, and that's part of that extremely complicated set of connections with the DNA.
And Dan, when I took my AP bio class in college, like genetics was presented as like Les referred to Gattaca, like no, really, it's just like a language, and there's only 4 letters. You're good. And there's just lots and lots and lots of them. But as I understand it from some of my colleagues, there's like 13 different ways DNA encodes information. It's not a straight linear, like, it's not just the base pairs. They're hugely important, but do I understand that correctly, or did I misunderstand?
If you're generalizing, even though there are only 4 bases, the way they capture and convey information is much more complicated. Emphatic yes to that.
Okay.
But I mean, since
I'll leave it
multiple
there.
people have brought up Gattaca, I will just say I love that movie. And in defense of that movie, I think that one thing they did right is, you know, that scene when he's born and they're like reading his genome sequence and they're reading off like his odds of having all these terrible things that mean he's probably not going to get to be an astronaut. And it's like they read that off in terms of probabilities, right? It was all
Right.
chance.
Right.
And that is a very, I think that was very astute of them because in the world of complex genetics that Toni was alluding to, there are a lot of probabilistic models that affect things now. Like, so for most of the common traits that we are probably interested in slash worried about as normal Americans, like diabetes, heart disease, or something, there's no single genetic marker that's going to influence that. It's like hundreds of them. So there are people working on rapid models that they're going to really be able to predict in a percentage type way your odds of having cardiovascular disease and things like that. That's something I credit Gattaca for getting right pretty early on.
Yeah.
I just had a thought that's completely unrelated. Toni, can I go back to something Catherine said?
Yes, you may. Go for it.
Okay, it should be fast. So, Kat, I don't want to leave Catherine's point about about the trope, the stereotype of evil scientists or evil engineers, with the impression that I don't disagree. That's a stereotype, and it's a stereotype. It's not universally true. All I was trying to say is that I understand sometimes where the stereotype comes from, and I think I just realized another reason the stereotype exists, Catherine, is because of what I was saying. We always say people are afraid of that which they don't understand. And we know, like, wizards were objects of fear in the mythologies to which David referred, because the people knew this guy's got weird powers. And I just don't have time to learn all that stuff in my life. And I don't know where the school is, and I probably don't have enough money to get in. And the same argument can be made about those of us in the scientific community that
I think you have a point. I mean, even look at, you see it in fantasy is like Harry Potter, they have to be able to go through that wall or something.
Yeah.
It's, I think, the ability to do science. There shouldn't be gatekeepers. Like David, when you were saying that math didn't come to you, I wonder if it's the way it was taught too, because everybody learns math differently.
It very probably was.
Yeah.
And
I just wanted to finish. One of the problems in older decades, older generations, there was assumption everybody learned math the same way.
Yeah.
And
everybody learned everything the same way.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I have to say that when our daughters were learning math, they would say, "Okay, help us with this problem," and Sharon and I would both solve it. We both get the same answer, and they say that's not right because you didn't do it the right way. And then they do it, and they come up with a different number, and we're going, we kind of thought that math was supposed to produce, the same result for everybody, but okay. One thing that my grandmother was born on January the 6th, 1900, and she died in May of 2001. And one year, she and I were at an Atlanta Braves game when she was 80 and I was 30. And she looked around and she said, when I was a young woman, every woman in the stadium would have been arrested for indecent exposure. And she meant it totally non-judgmentally. She was just talking about things had changed. And the Braves were not doing real well in that game. So we spent a lot of time talking about the changes that she'd seen in her lifetime and the changes that I'd seen in my lifetime. This is a woman who was born before the Wright brothers, who was 18 when World War I started, the whole 9 yards. And we realized that in my 30 years, I had probably seen more than half, probably closer to 2/3 of the major changes that she had seen that had affected societies and civilizations as a whole.
And that's terrifying.
It is. And that makes me, I sit here and I think about our 3 kids. You're even younger than ours. What are they going to see? Okay. And how much of it are they going to be able to conceptualize? I mean, we're tool users, okay? And the tool builders, the tool designers are yes, please, we need you to make more tools. For most human beings, it's going to be, where's the on button, I think.
But I think that does humanity a disservice, right? So I agree that that big science does amazing things, but I also am a huge believer in little science, right? That all humans, if they're not broken in some way, can read, they can do math, and they can use tools and they can futz around with them, right?
Yes.
Everybody does it. And
that's exactly what I was talking about. I'm just saying
yes,
that they're not going to possess the background to dive into a field the way that you four guys have done.
Well,
I think that's going to be untrue. All right. And I think that may be where the great AI revolution comes from, right? Is enabling people to experiment on an individual level in ways that are impactful on a societal level. Yeah. So what do you think, Catherine? Catherine first.
I think it's true. You know, AI, I very much appreciate the efforts that so many people are doing now to stop them from just taking our works and putting it in the AI without, you know.
Yes. Thievery is thievery. Yes.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And I want to make that clear before I say the next thing I say, which is that AI is probably the most powerful tool that we've maybe ever created. And to me, it's analogous to our use of cars. Most everybody takes cars for granted now, or vehicles, some sort of motorized transport. And we acknowledge that it has a lot of dangers. There's many deaths per year attributed to car accidents, for example. But we also acknowledge that it is incredibly useful. And so we train people how to use it, how to be careful, what to be aware of. It's an ongoing, lifelong process, which New York State keeps making me redo to lower my insurance rates.
Way to go, New York State. Yes.
I think with AI, I'm going to see, we're not just me, everyone's going to see the same sort of thing. People are going to learn to use AI. I mean, they already are. It has such far-reaching ramifications. Like, I think, who was it, David? Someone mentioned earlier that you use Google now to do things that, you know, when we first started writing, say in the 1980s or 90s,
right,
you had to go to the library and look it up. Then you could use Google or the web. Now you ask the AI. It's wrong a lot of the time, so you have to check.
This is the danger. I don't think it will get better. Actually, I think it's going to get much worse, and we're going to have to tear it all down and rebuild it again. That's an entirely other panel. But
that's what I was saying about the cars. We have to learn how to do this right. And I think right now we're kind of thrashing around, and because it's happening so fast, with cars, it didn't happen that fast. You had time to develop with the technology. With AI, it's happening so fast that
I'd say
we're almost losing control of it.
I think AI, even more than cars, I would compare it to electricity. Electricity is ubiquitous to our society. It's everywhere.
Right.
And we're going to see more and more, not just of AI being used as a tool by humans, but running the infrastructure in background around us the entire time. And I think that the long-range consequences are going to be both as enabling and as potentially dangerous as electricity itself.
That's a nice analogy. I like that. Dan, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I get asked a lot about AI because our field is one where it's being affected a lot. And honestly, I don't fully claim to understand all the stuff that they're doing with AI. And I think we have seen in our field, it is very useful at doing some of the things that it does. And I expect that to continue to grow. But it's also, like, famously bad at doing some things too, which I find very entertaining, honestly. I mean, in some ways, it's like that, you know, it's like a meme now where you're like, guess what this dumb answer is that the AI gave me. And I do find that very entertaining, but I mean, we're in pretty early stages of development for this relatively new advance.
Yeah, it is ubiquitous now among scientists.
It is. I'm sick of hearing about it. Like I know. I mean, like, you know,
my daughter says she could not operate at her job without AI, and it's not just, you know, it's like preparing grant proposals. To get back to your comments before about how awful having all dry grant proposals.
I can confirm that it's pretty horrible to do, having just done one.
You know, she uses AI for that, for answering questions, for translating things so that her non-English speaking colleagues can understand. It's ubiquitous. It's also ubiquitous in ways that take advantage of creating political
turmoil,
upsets, turmoil. Yeah, I mean, or creating problems because, you know, it gives the wrong answers. People use it to fake, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not even getting into, you know, what is intelligence and sentience versus sapience and predictive, you know, programs versus all of that kind of stuff. We're not going to get into that kind of nitty gritty, but I think we are the last generation who are going to understand how to interpret AI results because we have a bullshit detector. Right? We know enough of how our fields work, whether that be law or biology or space science, to know that, oh, this result that has been returned, it's like, I've never heard of this researcher and this, you know, this citation. Well, the reason why you, who is an expert in the field, have never heard of this citation is because the AI just made it up, right? Yeah. And we have the confidence to be able to check that. I don't know that future generations are going to have that, but I want you guys to write stories about that. So.
Yeah. I think they will, though. I mean, I'm seeing, especially with some of the youngest kids I worked with, or the most recent, I should say, they have a sophistication about the stuff that I don't think people of our generation really even understand.
Really?
It's almost like they have they're a slightly different, not species, you know, but they're a slightly different subset of human culture.
We would be a different species to our 19th century ancestors in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
And I think that you are correct. It is sometimes easier to fool someone who is not aware of the capabilities of AI than it is to fool someone who is. You know, seeing is believing. Okay, well, that looks awful. You know, I better do some background research to see whether or not it is. I think perhaps in an era when that kind of capability is even more broadly spread and available, that kind of monitoring system is going to become more of a second nature to the folks dealing with it. But I've had people ask me why there's not any AI in the Honorverse. And my response to that is the Honorverse is lousy with AI, but the folks in it take it as much for granted as we take the generating station at the other end of this line of wire that's sending it to us. They don't notice it until it screws up.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So
I have a question I'd like to pose, if I may, even though I'm not the moderator here. Since I have all these physicists here, and this is a point of curiosity for me, we were talking about science education in children and getting more kids interested in STEM, which I think is something science fiction can achieve. But one thing that I find very daunting about space travel and space and that sort of things is how far away, apparently I'm told, everything really is from us.
Yes.
And I was wondering, because
working
on these technologies, like Les, you said you've been working on solar sail, and Andy, you've been working on nuclear propulsion. But I mean, am I correct in understanding that everything is still super far away and it's going to be very, very hard to get there? And how do you get people interested in coming into your field to tackle what seems like a very daunting problem? Is where I'm
this is the perfect introduction to what is the Interstellar Research Group and why do I want to be involved in it?
Because the solar system is frigging amazing is the first answer to that question. The stuff that we can reach is pretty freaking cool, and there's a lot of it. That's right. That's my first answer.
Right. That is the first answer, right? Is that our neighborhood is going to provide a lot of challenges. But the challenges for our neighborhood, right? These are at this point engineering challenges. They are not, for the most part, changes in how we understand science challenges. But you're right, Dan. The next star is very, very far away. But as it happens, we have the Interstellar Research Group, and it's
as it happens, we have
Dan,
the IRG.
How much did she slip you under the table to ask that question?
Well, probably the other way.
Catherine's been to some
you
of
guys
our
get to ask genetics questions. I get to ask physics questions. I figure it's only fair.
That's absolutely fair. So take it away, Les, to tell them.
Well, unfortunately, the one meeting of the IRG that I didn't attend is the one that Catherine attended. So she has a different experience there. But I'm the program chair for most of the Interstellar Research Group Symposia. And it's an organization that's an all-volunteer organization of people who are fascinated and want to help us become a multi-solar system species in the future. And we're all pretty aware of the challenge of the distance and time and energies required to go to the stars. And I'm of the opinion that if we don't start thinking about it now, then it's just going to make the end fulfillment of going that much further away, right? And so it's really dedicated to get people together to explore realistic methods, scientific breakthroughs, things that are not the little propeller hat conversations you might get into with somebody late at night somewhere, but to actually talk about what it would take to go to the stars. And it turns out our next symposium is in Austin, near UT Austin, next week. By the time this airs, it will be in history. But the symposium after that is going to be in December of 2026 in Venice, Italy. And then there'll be one in 2027 that'll be probably in Atlanta, hosted by Georgia Tech. Ooh. So, Dan, we need you. We want you to come and give us some talks about the future of your field and how it can apply to help make us a multi-star species in the future. And if you want information, go to irg.space. I'll get hanged if I don't put the URL out.
You should mention too the student. Do you still have those student initiatives, like when you gave my student that award?
We do.
The grant award?
We have scholarships that are sponsored some of them sponsored by Baen Books, and the Richard Bolgio Memorial Award that goes to deserving students. And Rob, the Hampson family also donates, and we have a scholarship that goes to them, and it's open to all U.S. Undergraduates, and you can go to irg.space and click on scholarship application, and we award those every year. And I think the competition period's open right now. So absolutely.
Great.
Les, I think you're the first person. I think you're the first person to use the analogy of the cathedral builders of Europe to me in talking about where we need to go if we're going to build an actual extrasolar technology base. And I thought that was it's probably the historian in me, but I thought it was a really, really well taken analogy of people who know that they are not going to see the top of Everest, but also know that no one's getting to the top without the work that they do now to get them on the way.
And this is one of the reasons why the Interstellar Research Group, part of one of the things, the areas that we discuss at these symposia are not just the science and the technology, but also the culture. What legal basis do we need to be forming now for this kind of exploration? What kind of financial basis? What sort of cultural changes are needed to get to where we want to go? Which is why it's not just scientists, it's not just science fiction writers, but it's educators as well.
Well, one of the things I liked the time I went was the session that you guys all had me chair was on new propulsion, new physics. It was like an extrapolation of NASA's breakthrough physics propulsion program of thinking of new ideas. And, I think there's interest because when I was in graduate school many years ago, and I realized I wanted to write science fiction, I was really bothered by the fact that I wanted to write these interstellar civilizations. And exactly like Andy was saying, that you can't get there. And so I said, can I come up with something outside of the standard physics? And it was actually very simple what I came up with. It was a mathematical thing of, do you remember when you couldn't take square roots of negative numbers in grammar school? Well, there's a whole set of mathematics based on square roots of negative numbers. And when you introduce that into the equations of relativity, it takes away the problem at the speed of light. Of course, it also introduces you into an imaginary universe, which, you know, we don't know how to deal with. So, you know, but I was able to write a paper on it and have it published in the American Journal of Physics, which, you know, is a referee journal for the American Association of Physics Teachers. You know, one of the things they told me to do was put in the paper that this is a thought problem, you know, like Einstein's twin paradox.
Gedanken experiment, right?
Yeah, but it was, I did
You did
all
learn
the
that.
math, worked out everything you needed to do. I did this to write my science fiction books. But what they said was they wanted it because one of the reasons they wanted it was because they hope it would inspire students to think beyond, you know, to we need to find a new physics in order to overcome these problems, to get around, you know, the distances that we have to traverse to get out beyond our solar system.
Yep.
Well, you know, Catherine, though, fortunately, I believe this is a belief, not a scientific based thing. This is more of just my gut reaction looking at history, that we are in the same place today in astrophysics with dark energy, dark matter, and the things that we're not understanding about the universe, the discrepancy between the James Webb and the Hubble tension and the expansion rate of the universe and all that. We're on the brink of a new physics, I believe,
Yes.
that is
Whenever-
analogous to what we had at the beginning of the 20th century that led to nuclear physics and quantum theory.
Whenever
Absolutely.
somebody
I
comes to
agree
me and tells me
100%.
how much I love them, they're wonderful people. Whenever somebody comes to me and is just going on and on and on and on about how much science knows and however we know, oh, well, science will predict this and science will predict that and science knows this and we know, and they get into the we know this, we know that, I go, not the practicing physicists I know, they're ecstatic.
No, we really don't know what we think. We've got
explain
good theories that get most of it right, but
we don't even
on the
know.
edges, it's breaking down. On the edges, it's breaking down.
Yeah, you can say quantum mechanics is it's probably one of the most successful models of the universe ever created by human beings. But it's just a model. It's not truth. It's a model we developed to understand how things happen.
And reconciling different truths is something that we also haven't quite managed yet with physics, which is fantastic for science fiction writers, right? Because it opens it opens the door for a lot of possibilities.
One of my friends growing up, Mike Baxton, was the only person I ever knew who scored exactly the same on both halves of the college boards, and he maxed it on both of them. And he went into to nuclear physics. I've lost track of him in the last 10, 15 years, but he told me that the thing that fascinated him about physics and about the universe was that everything that he had learned only told him that the more he learned, the less he would know, and the more vistas would open as he went along. And I think to him, probably this will work for you guys because you're all hard scientists, but for him, science was the beauty of the universe. Science was a peek, if you will, inside God's mind, you know, what was going on here, and that reaching out, that knowing, that exploring, that was what drew him to it. And I think that's the allure of science. And I think also that we are now in a situation in which there is such a broader basis of scientific knowledge, even though we still know so little, and such a broad basis of people who are attacking the problems before them, that the rate of advance, you know, Les, you were using the example of where we were at the beginning of the nuclear generation. Okay, at the beginning of the nuclear generation, we didn't begin to have the size of the scientific community we have now, or the tools that we have now. And I think that means that I don't expect us to hit a wall that we can't get through. I expect us to find a way to dig under the wall, go over the wall, or around the wall. And you guys are the ones who are going to be the people to do that.
And I think part of the job of science fiction, again, is that leading that edge, right? Why do we want to attack the wall? Why do we want to gnaw through it? Why are we doing this? What wonders are we going to be exposed to? Why should humans do that instead of just sit in front of the TV and and smoke weed and just just be happy all the time. Why not, why I'm serious. We have to make that argument. Why not do that? Right?
Well, you put it perfectly, Toni, before when you said it's fun. It's fun doing
Well,
it.
I get excited when we find out we don't know how to do something, right? I mean, or we don't know the answer to this question. That's what excites me.
Well, I think all of you are kind of, when I'm listening to you talking, I'm thinking about Kipling's poem, The Pioneer, about something hidden, go and find it. Okay, I mean, that's what all you guys are all Ricky Tikki Tavi. Okay.
I prefer James Kirk, but
he was taller than you, so Ricky Tikki works better.
James Kirk wasn't taller than anybody.
That was not that big.
My hero was always Scotty. I'm just saying.
Can't imagine why that was.
Why Spock was always fixing his stuff.
I will point out that we still have books co-written by James Doohan on the Baen website. The character of Scotty was based on James Doohan actual biography.
He was a remarkable guy.
He really was. Yeah. So you can go to the Baen.com and check out those as ebooks. And all right, so I'm going to take that as my cue. Let's talk about the specific books that we're falling hard for this fall. I think Les, yours is the first out. We've got the paperback of your book with Travis in the Proxima series. So talk about the science in that.
Yeah, well, I can do that. Yeah, Crisis at Proxima, it touches on Dan's field, my field, and a lot of different fields about what is, first off, what is the nature of being human? How did we get here? And the question in the series is, if we find someone else like us, how did they get there? And how is this possible? And then you get into the modern quandary of course, we have the crisis that has to be solved, which is very biological in its basis. So forgive us, Dan, if we didn't get it right. We tried, as we did in the story. And there's also the science fictional aspect of it. For me, is I had so much fun playing with, and I know this sounds really esoteric, special relativity. There's a love story involved in the books, in the first book and the second book. And the way that it is resolved through special relativity of spacecraft traveling close to the speed of light. We had a lot of fun playing around with that. But central to that was the personal crisis of the hero, that central technological issue was facing upon him. But I have to say, in the whole series, my favorite character is introduced in the first book, in the first chapter, and that's the astronomer who detects a signal from another civilization. And I've often wondered, in my own Gedanken experiments, what it would be like to be on that first contact team, where you actually get some kind of a message and you have to figure out what it is and what it's all about. And I had a lot of fun writing that particular aspect, and it continues in Crisis at Proxima, which is the second book in the series, because there's yet another contact with another civilization that pops up in that book, and they turn out to be not very nice people. So we hope you go along for the ride. We think you'll enjoy it, and we'll wrap it all up in the third book, which we're working on right now.
And I believe entirely that you will be able to do this in 3 books.
You never know. It might be a real Baen trilogy of 5 books.
I know all about Baen trilogies.
You do. I just want to say too that central, the first question that started off Saving Proxima, where we have that first contact team, is exactly the start of Fenrir by Eric Flint and Reich Spohr. And Eric and Reich have been working on this for a long time. I think before you guys started working on yours. I know the contract was before yours, but we finally got it delivered and published earlier this year. But it goes off in a completely different direction, right? It's that same spark, that same the astronomer sees something that's not quite right. A strange signal coming out of far space, they think, off the plane of the ecliptic. We've never seen that. Things going too fast and moving like they're not supposed to. We have seen that recently. There are things coming at us that exactly, that we don't know that's happening right now. But hopefully neither of these options are going to be it. But it's just interesting to me that you can start from the same point in science fiction and go very, very different directions. So, all right, we'll hit, I think, Catherine next, then we'll go David, Andy, Dan. So did you put science in Gold Dust? I mean, was there?
Well, yeah, let me say what it's about. Gold Dust is about the Olympics in the future, and it follows a lot of the characters. And there's a lot of cultural clashes. There's a side plot of a neurological network that accesses another, a neurological space that's completely different from our space-time universe. I got to that by doing a lot of math and a lot of physics and a lot of science. It's mostly not explicitly put in the book because I found that my readers tend to skip it. I love to go on and on about the science that I use to get places in the book and the plot.
Yeah.
But
we need to get you to do an article about this for sure.
I would love to do that, but Gold Dust is it's about the people and their relationships. It's about, there is a lot of science involved. If you take the Olympics in the future, all these questions we've been talking about, ethics and what do you do and what's ethical to do to humans and where are we going and what are the various options of that come into play because, what's going to happen to sports when you can genetically engineer your people? And so there's a whole subplot of what's allowed and what's not allowed in the Olympics. They don't just test for drugs in the future. They test for, illegal genetic engineering, that kind of thing. No cybernetic enhancement. And then you go, I've written about in other books, if you go in the other direction, how much can you enhance a human being? Well, to the point where they almost don't become human.
Right.
I did a lot of science research and working out equations and stuff, but most of that is not in the book except as an underpinning. So I don't really talk a lot about the hard SF. I really like the characters. That's always for me, it's how science technology affects the characters, which goes back to, way back to like we've been talking about Star Trek a lot. I loved the adventure, but there was always, Captain Kirk was the heartthrob, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I don't want to make it seem like it's not that the characters, because hard science fiction has a reputation for making the characterization suffer at the expense of doing the science. And I don't want to make it look like that's what I do, because for me, the characters come first. It's how does the science affect them?
And I think it's important, but I think it's fun to a certain subset of readers to show your work, right? And the ability of ebooks and the cheapness of electrons means that it's easier for us to have that as an addendum, right?
You're absolutely right. And I've done essays. I don't think I did in Gold Dust, but I have put essays in the back of my books. I should do one, Toni.
You
I'll
absolutely
do one for the website.
Yes, please, please do. Right, all right. You will read it, right? All right, David, talk about challenges and where hard SF enters the honors.
Well, challenges is it's a prequel in every sense of the word to the entire honorverse.
Yeah.
One of the things that is a given in the honorverse is that the Star Kingdom survives this plague that almost wipes it out. And the story of Stephanie Harrington and the first integration with tree cats happens right on the heels of that plague. And one of the things that we've been doing particularly in Challenges, which is the first anthology completely set in that time period, is dealing with the impact on the people who survive it, what it does to them in terms of scars and so forth. That Stephanie, who got there after the plague had been beaten, isn't even really aware of until like the second or third book in the series, when she begins realizing that all of her friends that are native Sphinxians have this traumatic period in their past. One of the stories deals very specifically with what happens when a team that is going out just to observe this interesting little thing that's happening out there and arrives to discover that it's a plague with this horrendous mortality rate that's transformed. And so you have this bunch of graduate students and a couple of doctorates who are going out to observe and offer help, and then find themselves confronting the Black Death. And what did they do about it? How did they tackle it? What's their modeling for trying to beat the virus? And the fact that people die doing science is a part of that whole storyline. So the technological limitations start coming in when you look at how long it takes for the reinforcements to arrive from Beowulf, because first they have to get word to Beowulf and and get it all back again.
So interplanetary and interstellar distances are treated as real and not just subway stops.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, okay, they're treated as subway stops compared to anything we could do today.
Right.
I mean,
it's still far. It's still far future, but
yeah. But I think that again, the hard science is wrapped into the storyline in a way that makes it the foundation for the entire story, in many respects, for the entire anthology. But it's the people who are using that science, who are doing that science, that matters.
And I think that's why we're talking about stories that are set in far future universes still count as hard science fiction, right? With Catherine, with her rigorous underpinning for the science in her stories, and as well the approach to science and the implications of science as they're dealt with in the universe, they count as hard science fiction as well. That it's not just this very limited notion of what people have as a physicist solving a physics problem, right? It's not just that. That's why challenges is part of our Fall Hard for SF program, and I think we want to sort of expand that definition. Although I have to say that Ringer is in fact a near future, near space, people who are solving problems on a colony that is fairly new, and really does fit that very narrow definition of hard SF.
Though we don't, I've done some math in the background, but the story's not about the math.
What's the story about, Andy?
Yeah, so Ringer is about what it would be like to come of age in a group of human beings who live in a civilization that's probably about 100, 150 years old in the rings of Saturn. This culture, humanity, think the Expanse, but the Epstein drive is too advanced. So you're not getting from Earth to Saturn in a couple of days. It's more like crossing the Atlantic was back in the 16th and 1700s. So these folks would have gone to the next star if they could have, but the technology wasn't there. But it turns out that the rings of Saturn are a pretty interesting place to settle, especially if you don't want to be bothered. And so to understand sort of the cultural underpinning of the story, if you know Gerard K. O'Neill and his technological idea of large spinning space settlements, you'll understand the technical background of the story, and that's mostly where I come in. But for the cultural underpinning of the story, so Joelle, my wife, is the writer, really. And if she wasn't with our newborn right now, you guys would be talking to her. Not only better looking, she's also smarter and a better speaker. But I think so. She grew up in West Africa and moved to the States when she was 12. I was a U.S. Navy submarine officer. Both of us bring a perspective to what it would be like to live on a village that's about a mile long and spinning in an environment that wants to kill you in seconds if you go outside. And I think both of us think that that culture would be fascinating, and we'd both go if we could. So that's what the story's about. But notice I'm not telling you the plot.
Yeah.
No, and also the protagonist is a 13-year-old girl.
But if the series continues, she will not stay 13, and we have plans for her.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's science. Time is a thing, right? And the way we experience time is also a thing. So yeah. So Ringer absolutely falls into that hard science fiction. People dealing with problems and solving problems, but a lot of the problems are cultural, right? And they're very human problems.
What a great title too. It's just so perfect for where it's going to take place. I just love that.
Good.
So Andy, are you talking about the space station when O'Neill wrote that NASA document where he completely described how to make a spinning wheel in space? I use that for my books.
And one thing I wanted to tell just real quick. So Dan, the other answer, not only is it all the cool stuff that IRG is doing and the people in the propulsion community who are trying to come up with breakthrough physics, but it turns out if you go read the life support literature, it is a checklist of the stuff in the report Catherine just talked about how you build a closed loop ecology in space, how you raise fish and goats and rabbits, and you recycle the air, and you do all this stuff. And honestly, like I devoured that report and a bunch of the more recent stuff we've done on Space Station, and it's all underpinning the technology in the book. It's not really in the book, but yeah. But like I'm a propulsion guy, and this book, writing this book, got me fascinated with growing plants in space.
It really is. It's amazing. Every now and then I'd have a character say, but how do you do this? Just because I want to talk about it.
Absolutely. And
Andy, could you shoot me a link for that?
Yeah,
yes, sir. Yes, sir, I will. And there is going to be a web article coming out. We do not try to put all the tech in the story.
Yeah.
One, she's 13. She's not like maintaining the fusion torch, or she's not a worker in the gardens. She's coming of age. She's learning about her culture and all the technology. It's part of the reason we did it, was so we could teach you, the reader, about the technology as she comes of age. But we're also, Toni let me do a web article, Catherine, and she's gonna put that up sometime before the book comes out. And it's about the life support and some of that stuff. Yeah, David, you'll get it.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to give the biologist the last word. So
beautiful.
Biology always has the last word.
That was perfect. Yeah. So my book is called Dragons Gone Wild, and this is the third in the Build a Dragon sequence. Hat tip Toni for picking that series name, which has a double meaning. It's very clever. But of course, we've alluded to this already. The concept is that we can genetically engineer dragons, and so in the first book, we were engineering them for use as pets. And then in the second book, naturally, we were engineering them for use by the military. And then every time they find a new use for these dragons, immediately there's something that comes along that makes them need to find a new way to use dragons or sell dragons. So in book 3, they're using dragons to solve real world like ecology problems, which is something that's always fascinated me. And so there is real science in there, but it's about dealing with things like invasive species, and there's even a touch of history, which I think David will appreciate, going back to how many thousands of years ago we have documented instances of things like hordes of locusts, which I think was very fascinating, was really interesting to research. So my book is about the people who go out and design dragons to tackle these ecological problems out in the world.
And one of the things I love about how people solve ecological problems is how often they just go wrong. And then you have to have another science solution to figure out the first solution. So.
Hello, Australia. This is a rabbit.
Exactly. So, well, the solution is clearly going to be more dragons. So yes.
Yes, I agree.
So yeah, that's that is a fun series too. And Dan has also done articles for the website about the science behind behind this series as well. I think that's important, right? Because I think that's part of the fun, right? Is not just the story, but also is for the reader, the curious reader, to figure out, all right, where does the science stop and the speculation begin? And
also to young me, I mean, it would have been really nice if Gene Roddenberry had thrown something like that out there, so I would have known the thing wasn't real. Know how much work I would have to do to get the thing. I mean, my gosh. I've been at it for 40 years and I'm not done.
Some of us figured it out pretty early, though, I have to say.
I'm in management, Les. I'm not the brightest light in the harbor.
Well, okay, Andy, you're still ahead of the high school teacher whose student asked him when the world went from black and white to color. And it was a serious question. You know.
I remember Star Trek in black and white. So
I do too.
Things were much clearer then. So, all right, I guess we'll let David, the historian, have the final note. I want to thank you guys for spending time with us and joining the Baen Free Radio Hour. Please do join us in Falling Hard for Hard SF. This is just a small sampling of what Baen has published. This is some of the newer stuff, but we've got a lot of other great hard science fiction writers out there, including Rob Hampson and James Cambias and Will McCarthy, and Larry Niven and Jerry Pornell. There's all kinds of great stuff in our backlist too. So if you guys like this kind of stuff, I invite you to explore these authors and then keep on following. So. Thank you again. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, and for being such a great moderator.
Yeah, this was fun.
Oh, good. All right.
She's had a lot of practice wrangling writers.
It shows.
Herding cats.
Yeah, 6 of one, half a dozen the other. So.
And now, as promised, one jump ahead. John Moore is a nanotech-enhanced soldier of fortune. Lobo is an AI, a living weapons and intelligence platform of enormous destructive potential. Two very dangerous wolves in a galaxy of deadly corporate and paramilitary predators. But Moore has grown weary of the killing, and just once he'd like to finish a job without leaving a trail of blood behind him. Not going to happen. Not on a pristine planet called Macken, where two gigantic corporations vie for control of the local jump gate and access to the riches of an undeveloped world. Dealing with a kidnapping and extortion scheme is only the beginning for Moore and Lobo as they work to stay one jump ahead.
Though it's certainly within the realm of possibility, someone gave the little agrarian troublemakers enough information that they knew about the girl and where to find her. I have trouble believing Slake would station anyone on Macken he couldn't trust. The Kelco Advance Group there is still rather small. The FC has no reason to hurt Kelco. That leaves Zychek. Chung is based here? Yes. I nodded my head, thinking, trying to pin down what was still bothering me. A few seconds later, I figured out what it was. I don't understand why you and your company are in the bounty hunting game, nor why Chung would even approach you. Explain it to me. A condescending smile played across Osterlad's face, an expression I suspect his subordinates witnessed frequently. It vanished quickly as he regained full control. Chung is a valuable customer of ours. The problem arose in the course of a conversation on other topics, so we naturally offered to help. He spread his hands as if to include me, as if I were someone he was selling to, which in a way, of course, I was, as we would offer to help any valued customer or friend. I ignored the pitch. What was that conversation about? I said. Osterlad shrugged, his attempt at diversion having failed. Zychek doesn't intend to let Kelco have the rights on Macken. Chung is buying weapons from us and assembling a private militia to do whatever is necessary there. And before the Frontier Coalition takes the issue seriously enough to extend the SAWS contract in this sector to cover Mackin. Until then, of course, the government would be very unlikely to get involved in a little corporate squabble, even one that left a few casualties. How do your friends at Calco feel about you supplying Zychek? He shrugged again. Confidentiality is, as you must understand, paramount in our business. We do not discuss the arrangements of any client with another. Thank you, I said, stalling. You must manage security well to be able to play both sides and have nothing leak. He bowed slightly, a mocking smile on his face, but said nothing. With what he'd told me, the picture was clear, so I didn't need anything else from him. I could find a corporate headquarters myself. Chung was now my problem. Osterlad, however, remained an issue. I don't suppose you'll leave me alone if I let you go, I said. His smile crept marginally closer to being real. Of course not. Even if I wanted to, the offer for you is substantial enough that some of my more entrepreneurial subordinates would pursue the matter independently, and they find it a sign of weakness that I didn't put the company in the game in the face of a direct client request. He shook his head. No, I couldn't. I nodded again. I didn't think so. I stared at him until he looked into my eyes. If I get Chung to withdraw the offer, would our business be complete? I don't know why I bothered to ask. I knew what his real answer would be. He'd lie, of course, because any small chance of keeping life going is, in those moments when you know death is reaching for you, better than no chance. Perhaps, he said, provided you paid the remaining balance on the control complex and the cost of restoring my boat. I had to give him respect once again. It was the most convincing version of the lie he could tell. A less skilled liar would have grabbed for the hope I'd dangled. I faced two options: kill him, or keep him as a hostage and hope his company valued him enough to leave me alone for at least a while. Keeping him, however, only delayed the inevitable, because eventually I'd have to let him go, and then he'd come for me. Still, like him, I preferred to cling to the small chances when I could, and I truly wanted to avoid more killing. He interrupted my reverie. In the drawer, under the wheel, he said, are a variety of painkillers. May I stand and get some? I nodded. As he pulled himself up, I reached a decision. I turned slightly to my right and murmured, Lobo, come get us. We're going to have a guest for a while. I hated the idea of maintaining a prisoner, but maybe I could work this out given more time. If I could get Chung and Zychek off my back, then maybe money, perhaps coupled with a little groveling on my part that Osterlad could use to illustrate his strength to his staff, would be enough to placate the man and his company. Maybe it could work. Lobo came into view above us, his low-altitude engines warming the air, quiet enough in stealth mode that their sound added to but didn't drown out the backdrop of ocean noise. I looked up to see where he was targeting landing. When I looked back at Osterlad, he was pointing a small weapon at me. I shook my head at my own stupidity. You're worth more alive than dead, he said, but not enough more that I won't shoot. Put down your weapons, then bring in your ship. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. I'd wanted to avoid a repeat of the episode with Johns, but if I could stall Osterlad, then I could decide whether to use the same techniques on him. Lobo saved me the decision. The air popped with an arc of energy. For a split second, the light around Osterlad's face flared like a sun throwing off extra energy. His severed head fell.
This has been the Baen Free Radio Hour. Thanks for joining us at the heart of science fiction. Join us next week as Griffin Barber interviews Brian Trent about his forthcoming Black Tide Rising novel, Perdition's Storm. And later, we continue with part 37 of One Jump Ahead by Mark L. Van Name. Score by Ruth Judkowitz.